Okay, we're going to call to order the Port of Bellingham Commissioner meeting for Tuesday, November 6th, 2018. As usual, I will start with roll call. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Mr. Shepherd.
Here.
Commissioner Bell is here, all accounted for. We start these meetings with public hearing or public comment. I want to make sure we make a distinction. We do have a public hearing tonight. Public comment period is not for items slated for the public hearing. So if you want to talk about the public hearing topic, that's for later. Public comment, I have one person signed up currently. If there's anybody else that wishes to speak, you may. We allocate 15 minutes for this. You can take 3 minutes and we'll start with Elizabeth. Is that what it is?
You mean Harley?
Harley.
Harley Applebaum.
Harley, come on up.
Perfect.
For some reason, I thought that was your last name, comma first.
No, sorry about that. That's my poor penmanship, we'll call it. I showed up this evening because I wanted to first kind of talk about, my topic is storage lockers in the harbor for commercial fishermen, meaning the lockers set over here in Bellingham. And I'm just kind of curious what goes on because I moved to Bellingham permanently 3 years ago, and I've had the boat coming and going out of this harbor for about 9 years. And I've had my name on the storage locker list for 9 years, and I haven't moved at all. And I know there's several people, and I'm not going to name names, and that kind of, I just want to know how it all works in the harbor, and maybe you can explain to me. But it's under my impression, those lockers are set aside for commercial fishermen, and I know of several instances in the harbor, and I would never name names, but there's guys down there that don't fish anymore. They don't have boats in the harbor anymore. They're retired. Their boats are gone, and yet they still have lockers, and some of them have more than one. So guys like myself coming to town are looking for inside storage. There's lots of great outside storage, and I move my crab pots around the outside storage and my bait sheds and that kind of thing, and they come and go. But that inside storage, my guys and I would prefer to work inside overhauling crab gear and that kind of thing. It's convenient, let's put it that way. So I was just wondering what protocol is on possibly cleaning up the situation and getting it so guys that are moving to town, or like myself, I fish the West Coast, I fish Alaska, you name it. And I'm just looking for a spot to call home down there so I can do work in the harbor, so to speak. And there's some of us in that situation here. So I know there's one guy that sells art out of his locker down there. I know another guy, he doesn't even bring his boat here anymore, and he has household furniture from 2 years ago in that locker. So my whole thing is, on the bandwagon, is how can we get inside storage and things cleaned up down here so that the list starts moving? And that's all I'm going to keep it at. Basic. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Harley, thanks for coming and speaking to that. We have started to move in a direction, and we know we need to address exactly what you're speaking to. And we've kind of stagnated a little bit here in the last 6-8 months on that, and I'd like to get that moving again, and we will.
Well, and I won't stand there and talk, but I've talked to the harbor master. Everyone's hands are tied until you guys kind of come up with a plan and formulate that plan and how to. And a bunch of those guys are my buddies down there in this situation that they're going to have to possibly move. And in my head, if you don't have a boat in the harbor paying full-time mortgage in Bellingham, I pay year-round mortgage, and many of us do, then after a period of time, let's say 3 years, either you get a new boat or you move your crap out. Basically.
So a lot of those guys were your buddies. And I'm going to take that up, and we'll address that under other business this evening. If you want to stick around, we'll add it to that section of our agenda. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. And if you need a friend, just call. Because you just.
They're going to tar and feather me for a couple of years down there, and then I'll be okay.
I've got a pretty good solvent that takes that off. All right, again, we've got more time for the public comment period. This is not to be confused with our public hearing, which is on the budget. So if you've got another public comment, anyone wishing to speak? Okay, we're going to close off, don't gavel that. We're going to close off the public comment period and move on to our consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Gentlemen, what are your wishes? Anything?
No, I read through it, went through it, everything's pretty straightforward, I think, there.
I had a question on C. And my question was just is the reason for the excess funds in those first two budget items because those projects haven't begun yet and they're just taking slower to get on track? And are we going to be in a situation where we're fishing for the funds at a later point when those come up when those are online and ready to go?
Good question. Thank you, Commissioner Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. The majority of all the moving of the money around between these grants is related to the excess capacity we have in one grant that isn't enough to get construction done on that project. And then there's some deficiencies on getting the other projects really to the shovel-ready point where we can then go to the Department of Ecology and say, hey, we're shovel-ready, we're ready for full funding for construction on those projects. So it's really a combination of things. So there wasn't one, each site has its own unique situation, but really it was excess capacity in the Georgia Pacific grant that we don't have enough dollars to get through construction on that, but we have enough to continue through design and engineering. So whatever was left over, we thought we'd reallocate to the projects that need money to get us to a point where we're shovel ready on those. So that doesn't really specifically answer the project specific questions, but each site's kind of a case by case basis. Is that?
And so for the Georgia Pacific sites, when we have to come back and we're ready to be shovel ready for them, where are we going to be digging for money somewhere else, or where are we going to find those resources?
Yeah, we've been projecting with the Department of Ecology our long-term needs. We have a 10-year plan projection of what our spends are. We do a regular quarterly update to them and a project that we'll need to backfill these. Really, they prefer that we get to that shovel-ready point, then they can go to the legislature and ask for full construction funding. As you might recall in previous updates, we've talked a bit about MODCA funding and how the legislature had looked at these big dollars that were just sitting there, not being used because we were in study mode or design mode, and we weren't really spending it down. And so they like to see these kind of be a little bit more streamlined now. And then when we're really ready, have permits in hand, then we go to the legislature and ask for that funding. And we're projecting that though forward. So they're ready for that ask when we're ready for it.
Okay, so they're not going to be surprised.
No.
About this.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. That's all for me.
And I'm just ecstatic that Kuru is coming back for a long-term lease. Oh, it's just a stone's throw from me, and it is fabulous. So
I was wondering if I was going to have to recuse myself from the vote because we're there so often.
I'm trying to figure out how to route that conveyor belt up to my office before it goes back down. So, that being said, consent agenda?
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, now the moment we've been waiting for,
The joke. I don't want to hear the rest of it, I
the
just want to hear the good
budget.
You still want to hear my jokes after I failed so badly last time?
Hey, everybody needs a second chance, right?
We're gluttons.
All right. Okay, I guess I will. Tamara Sobjack, Director of Finance. So guy walks into a lawyer's office, says, how much do you charge? Lawyer says, well, I charge $1,000 for 3 questions. Whoa, isn't that kind of expensive? Lawyer says, yeah, what's your third question?
That was good. You
Thank
redeemed
you.
yourself.
I'll be here all night. All right, so this, as you know, is the first of 2 public hearings on the budget. I just wanted to mention a couple of things before you open it up to the public comment. The draft budget's been on the website for about 2 weeks, so lots of time for people to look that over. There have been a few changes in those 2 weeks that we've made, and I need to point those out to you. because with your approval, they'll be included in the final budget. So the first item is, recall, we had a discussion about the property tax increase. I went ahead and removed that 1% increase and kept it flat, but keeping the levy on the new construction. And I wanted to make sure that that is what the commission wants for the final budget. First thing.
You want that answer now?
I can go on and then maybe get the answer later.
Yeah.
Do we just run through the items first?
I think we've all
I think we
agreed
pretty
on
much
that
agreed
already.
that we don't want to raise anything.
Yeah.
No raising? Okay, perfect. That's what I've got in there now. We met with our employee health insurance broker last week, I believe, and we had in the draft budget an increase for medical premiums. Turns out we don't need that increase, so we went ahead and took that out. Looks like rates are going to remain flat, same as 18 and 19, so that's a pretty huge decrease. There were some small changes to the asset replacement. Those are computers and vehicles and such. Nothing really significant. I know I have significant changes up here, but wanted to mention they're just a few little minor items. The biggest item we changed was we added $750,000 to the Web House 1 relocation in Blaine, added that money to 2019. Turns out our 2018 budget just isn't enough. So we added that to 2019. And then we added $200,000 to add restrooms at the F Street warehouse for LFS. That's for 2019 as well. And then finally, we added $350,000 for property acquisition at the airport, and that is 90% FAA eligible.
So just to clarify, the bill to the port on that will be about $35,000, and the FAA will pick up $315,000 of that purchase. And that's for a property on the other side of the freeway, next to where all the lighting is, so that we can improve our lighting, get it out of the freeway median, and keep that area from having noise issues. So again, $315,000 by the FAA and $35,000 by the port.
So those really are all the changes that have been made from the draft to the final. And if the commission agrees on that, this is what our cash position will be. We'll be projected to begin the year with about $13.5 million, bringing in just under $50 million, using that same amount, ending the year just like we began at 13.7. Obviously, we have that reserve that's required, just under $10 million. And then we'll have just under $4 million available for future uses. And that's really all I have. I just wanted to mention those things before you open it up for public comment, or, sorry, public hearing.
Any other questions, concerns, or conversation needed on the budget?
No, I'm good. I have a question, but that can be answered later. So.
Thanks for the input earlier in the week. Thank you.
For that restroom, when we build in restrooms, does lease rates go up for the tenant? Or
Correct.
is that just a improvement that we're making on our own?
In that case, we are doing that on behalf of the tenant. They had the option of doing it themselves or having us do it at a 5% return rate. So they'll be paying us an amortized amount plus 5% on that.
Okay. And for the Blaine project for the Web House, are we still breaking that out into 2 budget cycles?
I think the work will all be done in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. We're bidding it later. We talked about bidding it later to take advantage of hopefully a better bidding environment, but mostly to let the ground settle. It was settling at an uneven rate, and we've got 1 inch in some areas and 3 inches in other areas. So we're bidding it all now in 19. I believe the work will be completed in 19, so I don't think it spans 2 budget cycles anymore.
Mr. Briscoe?
I have no questions.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing. So I close the regular session, open the public hearing. Public hearing, I've got 2 people. To the person that wants to talk about transparency, just come to the mic and tell us your name. Okay, then we'll move on to Matt Harden. Long time no see.
Hey, how are you? I just wanted to come here today, and Debbie Granger asked me to speak a little bit about Sea Feast. And so I kind of am representing the Working Waterfront Coalition and then my own two businesses, Northwest Diesel Power and Cardinal Yacht Sales. And I guess from a personal standpoint as well, we just are really excited about Sea Feast, the way it's grown over the last few years. And we just really want to encourage the port. I think all you guys are on board with that, but it's never hurts to just communicate that we really would look forward to seeing that grow and expand, and the port hopefully really see that as a area of growth for our waterfront and the city long term in Bellingham. And I think we see a lot of economic benefits as well as cultural and community benefits that really, I think, draw together a large contingent of our community. And it's something that, as we see some of the cities' support for that shrink just a little bit, we're really encouraging the port commissioners to step up and make sure, without any doubt, that we are able to fund that project and see it grow for the long-term community. So that's it.
In response to that comment, this commissioner is all about doing exactly what you said, Matt. And I don't think my fellow commissioners in any way want to see that go away either. So we will be, and also Director Fix, you see him nodding his head. We're all about pro Sea Feast here. So thank you.
I reiterate that, and then I will ask you to step up next time the Best of Bellingham comes up so that Sea Feast becomes the gold medal winner when that magazine comes out, and not Ski to Sea for the 20th consecutive year.
I think they're always looking for maritime folks, too, to participate in the oyster competition there, Matt.
I'll hold you to that. I know where you are.
You're up next, though. You're next year. No getting out of it.
Okay.
No pre-plan. Trips to miss it.
One last one. Anybody want to talk about transparency? If not, I'm going to close this public hearing. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Public hearing is closed. And we'll move on to our action items.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute documents required to close the $75,000 loan between Cirrus Cycles Incorporated and the Port of Bellingham for the Economic Development Administration Revolving Loan Fund. This loan was approved by the Revolving Loan Fund Loan Committee on October 30th.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Michener, Economic Development Specialist, Port of Bellingham. I'll give a quick overview of what the program is in case nobody's aware of what it is. And then a couple gentlemen from Cirrus are here to give you a brief overview of what they actually do here in Bellingham and really cool products that they produce. This is a federally funded program. We want to get that clear to begin with. These are not local dollars or state dollars. They're federal dollars that we administer on the EDA's behalf. So we are able to make loans to private business here, which you couldn't do with state or local dollars. The program started in 1988. To date, there's been 31 loans made. This will be the 32nd. In terms of public funds, it is a revolving fund. So total capitalization of the fund right now is around $275,000, but $2 million have gone out into the community and revolved and come back. It's been matched by $4 million from capital from the banking industry, and then another $4 million in private equity. So about $10 million total has gone out into the community and come back. The main purpose for this program from the EDA standpoint is to create jobs. It's not a money-making thing at all. It's just about job creation. One of the actual items that's required when we do one of these loans is that we need to get a letter from a commercial lender saying that they wouldn't do the deal. It's a higher risk type thing where we can get people in financed and move forward, and it's been very successful to date. We've had over 212 jobs that have been saved or retained. So from a public sector standpoint, that's $9,000 that's gone out into the community to create one job, and then the money's come back to us too, keeps going. So it's been a really fantastic program that we're happy to have. Today, this particular loan is with Cirrus Cycles Incorporated. They are a local manufacturer here in Bellingham. And I have David Callip and Paul Barkley here today from the company to give you a brief overview. And as Diane mentioned at the beginning, it's a $75,000 loan, 4% over 5 years, mainly working capital that we're going to do for these folks. And the loan committee did meet and approved it. And now we're looking for the commission to say yes, the director can go ahead and sign the loan documents. And with that, I'll turn it over to David and Paul and let them give you a brief overview of what exactly it is they do. And we'll play a little show and tell.
Yeah, here, thank you, John. Thanks, Rob. I'm David Callip, CEO of Cirrus Cycles, and behind me here is Paul Barkley, the original inventor of the product and founder. What we have is a nifty little bicycle accessory. It's a suspension seat post for those of you that want to be connected to your saddle but not feel the pain of riding your bike. It just makes the whole sport much more enjoyable. So that's what we produce in primary, and we're working on various versions of it. We offer it in several sizes, but basically it keeps the rider stable, lets the bike move underneath you, and keep the rider still. So you have a lot more comfort, and as I said, a lot more enjoyment in riding bikes. It improves your health and the ability to improve the health of the society and get people out of their cars and on the bikes for more exercise. So we feel it's a good product, and so far we've had great success. We have, Paul originally formed the company, I guess, in the end of 2011, so it's been around a while. Spent a couple of years developing the product, and we sold the first 50 units in 2014, just barely getting rolling. And this year, well, by the way, I came on in 2014, and we really got things together as a business manager. I've been running several companies around and was coming out of retirement, kind of part-time retirement, to help Paul with this company. So it's been a fun run, and so far we're growing fairly rapidly. We're more like 7,000 units, or close to 8,000 this year, probably by the end of the year, and close to $1 million in sales. So we're finally at that stage where we're seeing some profitability and seeing a nice little business roll out. The problem with having that kind of success, as you might imagine, is funding the growth, both for inventory, so we can bring in more components, manufacture more products, so we can sell more demand. We're seeing a lot of demand around throughout the nation and throughout the world. We're seeing it increase pretty substantially for us, and we haven't been able to meet that demand. So this loan, we really appreciate participating in this loan and being able to build more inventory and also hire some critical people that are necessary. We're adding a sales manager this year. We've identified someone that will come on next year, and that person is going to enable us to get faster into more distribution, more dealers. There's about 4,000 small bike dealers in the nation, and we only sell to, well, we have sold about 500 of them, but we're only about 150 active dealers. So out of 4,000, we're only getting to 150 with a long ways to go. Secondly, just to distribution around the world, we have only a couple of international distributors that are really substantially selling product now. And if we had 10 countries on board instead of 2, we'd be exponentially growing the company. So we're finally profitable, finally growing, and doing all the things you need to do. And this loan will really help us take the next step in the marketplace. So we really appreciate participating, and I welcome any questions. If anyone has any comment or anything, or want more information, you can see me after any other time. I know, Rob saw it before and is looking forward to having one, I think, so that's good.
I've got a question, John. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about the fund so everybody knows about why this is a good opportunity. Tell us the minimum request and the maximum request, the payout time average, and about how many of these we get a year.
Absolutely. One of the, so to back up, minimum, we normally look at about $35,000, simply because that's the threshold. The EDA requires one job per $35,000 of public financing within 2 years of the loan closing, so that's a nice number. Right now, we're not allowed to do more than $75,000 per deal, simply because the size of the loan, the total capitalization is relatively small, so we don't want to put too much at risk with one borrower. That's another, it's a two-way street here. It's tough because we would like to capitalize the fund more, but in order to do so, we have to turn a bunch of people down and show the need. And I haven't felt real comfortable going out and promoting a program when we can't make any loans. It seems not real fair. So we get loaned out is the issue. And it's been great with the loan committee that we just had last week. One of the bankers came to me yesterday and said, hey, I've got another company, and I'm going to meet with them tomorrow to see about doing a deal with them. If that one goes through, then we have no more money in the bank. We're loaned out, so we're not going to go and promote the program. And on the federal level too, the funding to recapitalize these funds has been kind of iffy anyway. So we do the best we can with what we got. So to answer your other question, Commissioner, it's been about a year since we've done one. We had another application last spring, but the deal didn't come together as we had hoped, so that one did not go through. So it's 1 to 2 a year, just depending on how much money is in the bank and how much we can promote the program.
I like that concept where you can actually build, it's like 2 for 1 if you can get a banker involved, because then the banker has a loan that he's giving.
And actually, Commissioner,
Based-
that is the ideal situation we do look for,
Absolutely.
is a bank will come in and say they're going to finance an asset or something, a piece of machinery, what have you, but they're not real comfortable going for that little working capital piece that's going on there, that little gap financing. And we can typically come in with a lower rate or maybe a longer period, amortization period, so the cash flow looks better. The bank's okay with the new cash flow. We can come in and help them out, and together we move forward and
And
get
it
the deal done.
guarantees the bank that they're going to be stable for at least a period of time to pay back the loan that they're giving. Yeah, that's
Yep.
huge. Okay. Any other questions?
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute documents required to close the $75,000 loan between Cirrus Cycles Incorporated and the Port of Bellingham EDA revolving loan fund. The loan was approved by the committee on October 30, 2018.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Pell is an aye. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item, number 2.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute a developer extension agreement with the city of Blaine to replace the existing asbestos cement water main along Milholland Avenue at an estimated cost of approximately $105,000 prior to July 31, 2023.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Gibson, Project Engineer. This developer extension agreement with the City of Blaine is something that we've been collaborating on with our legal counsel. Basically, this is going to be part of the permit allowing us to build Web House number 1 in the next year. As I'm sure you are all very aware, when a developer comes into an area and wants to construct an improvement like a Web House, the city generally requires that project to include some frontage improvements, such as proper road and some sidewalks, gutters, landscaping. And that it's a common sense way for public amenities to keep track with the developing area. So this is just an example of a typical standard from the City of Blaine. You can see the different elements in there. The width of the roads, the thickness of the pavement, the sidewalks, and so forth. In this particular case, the Wharf District Master Plan governs, and as you can see kind of in this display, that includes sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and street trees along Marine Drive and Milholland. Now, when we started to get into the design, we sat down with the city and said, look, does this really make sense to build a sidewalk through this area? We have a lot of boats and trucks and trailers going through. Is it really going to be attractive for people to use this sidewalk? What we see right now is people cutting across the grass, trying to get from the promenade out to the boat launch area. So wouldn't it make more sense to provide a public trail out there that would actually get used? And with all of that, we were keeping in mind that we really don't know the long-term plans for this area, so we're not eager to put in a bunch of permanent curb cuts and sidewalks and landscaping, not knowing what's going to happen soon. Fortunately, the City of Blaine understood our position on that, and they were in agreement, so they did allow us to install this trail in lieu of the traditional frontage improvements. However, during the design review process, the Public Works staff looked at their records and saw that they do have a section of asbestos cement water main going through Milholland Avenue. And if you're not familiar with that product, it was pretty commonly used in the U.S. In kind of the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. And it has a pretty limited shelf life. So over time, it starts to degrade. It's seeping materials, and eventually just doesn't have the mechanical strength that it needs. So it starts to cave in, it starts to have leaks, and obviously that leads to expensive repairs and a down system. So in addition to providing the trail, they would like us to go ahead and replace this section of pipeline. And as you saw in your commission packet, it's a pretty simple agreement. It consists of basically about 400 feet of this pipeline. We would have around 5 years to get it replaced. Our estimated cost is around $100,000, and that funding was included in the 2019 budget proposal. And I should note that that 5-year timeline, it does provide a chance for us to maybe have a private developer take care of this if one of our upland tenants or a newcomer sees a way to improve that property. This could be included in their project. Do the commissioners have any questions for me?
I have a comment more than the question. The part about later on the tenant taking care of it, that I think that with as much as we're going to be doing there soon, wouldn't it make sense to get it done now? And then if we need to pass on a cost later, we can do that instead of waiting. I don't know what the plans are at the boatyard across there, but I see them doing some work and getting things cleaned up. I would think that if we got this done now, the sooner the better, and then we're not disrupting whatever they clean up and do. So I think that in my mind, it's not, let's put it off till later, let's get it done now. Then that's my comments, I'll have to say.
And mine is very similar. I don't know why we don't just do it. If it's $100,000, we can get it done. We can add a latecomers agreement to any development project that comes along the way to recoup any costs that we may have along. That's a common instrument that can pass along that cost. And if we're going to allocate the money, we might as well get it done. I've replaced one of these, and the damage it can do, if we don't get it done in a timely manner, is much worse than. So yeah, I'd be in favor of just doing it.
Is this just service line out to the restrooms and stuff? Is that what we got?
Yeah, essentially it's serving the hydrants and the restrooms.
Restrooms, yeah, fire, okay.
Is there any drinking water that's being sourced through this right now?
I believe there is.
Water fountain.
Water fountain at the restroom?
Yeah, the water fountain's at the restroom. The proposed web house does not have drinking fountains per se, but obviously it's going to have some spigots, and those would be served by this as well.
It's not nearly as good a pipe as what we'd put in there. I mean, it's just a crappy pipe, so.
So just so we're all clear, you've got this included in the 2019 budget. It's in the cash flow.
Correct.
I don't know if it's in 2019 or 2022.
It's in the 5-year plan in the
It's in the
2019
5-year
budget. Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. So commissioners, it's not right now allocated to be funded in 2019. It's in the 5-year plan. So when we say it's in the 2019 capital budget, we're saying it's in the 5-year plan. We can move that up based on the direction I'm hearing here. $100,000, we'll move it up and we'll do it in 2019.
That'd be my preference.
Yeah, that's what
It
we'll
seems
do.
like it'd be cheaper if we got the guys building right across the street, digging and ripping things up anyway.
5 years from now, it won't be $105,000.
Yeah.
And asbestos disposal will be more, yeah. So. I think we're ready.
I have no further questions.
I have no further questions.
Authorize the executive director to execute a developer extension agreement with the city of Blaine to replace the existing asbestos cement water main along Milholland Avenue at an estimated cost of approximately $105,000 prior to July 31, 2023.
Or can we just make that 2020 or 2019, just make sure we get it done? Okay. Commissioner Prisco?
Aye.
And Mr. Bell is an aye. 3. Thanks.
Thank you.
Action item number 2.
3.
3. That's construction.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Raz Construction of Bellingham, Washington for the C Street Terminal Project Phase 2 in the amount of $540,130.30, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $594,143.33.
Good evening, Commissioners. Greg Nickel, Project Engineer. This project is the second phase of work in a multi-phase project down at the C Street Terminal to complete a number of improvements as well as to complete environmental cleanup of the site. The first phase of work, which was completed in 2016, focused primarily on the C Street right-of-way between Roeder and Maple Street. That work included construction of a new concrete roadway, undergrounding of the power in that area to improve access, installation of a water line on behalf of the city of Bellingham, and installation of new stormwater treatment and collection facilities. The second phase of work, which is the one we're talking about now, is an interim action that's the primary focus is to ensure compliance with stormwater regulations. The scope of work includes some site grading on the northwest and northeast corners of the site to contain all stormwater on the site, and then it'll direct that stormwater to a new stormwater pump station that will be installed in the southeast corner of the site. That's going to be a temporary pump station that will convey all the stormwater from the site to the ASB lagoon. The only real permanent improvements that we're completing as part of this project is to install new water and power service to the site and to install power and water pedestals along the Maple Street bulkhead to serve vessels in the Whatcom waterway. Future phases of work include some hotspot cleanup work in the southeast corner of the site, some additional cleanup and capping work on the site, and installation of new stormwater facilities. The project schedule, we're anticipating issuing notice to proceed in the middle of November. We have a 120-day construction period. You'll note that's a fairly long construction period for the limited amount of work we're doing. But what I understand is due to the hurricanes in the southeast, there's long lead times on electrical equipment, and we've heard anything up to 5 months to get that equipment. So we've provided an extended construction period. We anticipate the contractor will only be on site about 30 to 45 days. We have coordinated with the users of the terminal to ensure that our operations don't interfere with the operations of the terminal, which are increasing in the near future. And so we've included a number of accommodations in our contract to ensure that the operations of the terminal precede the operations of construction. That includes a brief shutdown period. It includes a requirement to close all trenches within 48 hours notice, and we're staging all equipment off the site. We anticipate completing construction of this project in March of 2019. For this project, we received 5 responsive bids. Those bids ranged from $540,000 to $755,000, and the low bidder was Raz Construction. We've reviewed Raz's bid, and we did not find any significant outliers in their bid, and we also spoke with them about their bid, and they're comfortable with honoring that bid. Therefore, we're recommending award of this contract to Raz Construction. Are there any questions?
Got a question. So walk me through what happens when the ASB pond gets repurposed into another use. So we're building a temporary stormwater pipe over to that as our outfall right now. What happens next?
So there are plans, and a lot of what's happening on the C Street terminal revolves around the environmental cleanup, which is, as I understand it, somewhat of a work in progress to determine the final disposition of that site. Once that is determined and we move forward with that construction, we'll install permanent stormwater facilities that will include a new outfall, and we won't be relying on the ASB lagoon any longer. The intent for this is really just to get us out of any immediate jeopardy of discharging stormwater off the site.
Okay. So there will be we'll have to redo some of this work at a later date to install more localized catchments.
Correct. As I mentioned, the stormwater pump station is intended to be temporary, and you'll notice if you ever take a look at the drawings that it's a fairly, I don't want to call it cobbled together, but we're using some salvaged materials and some fairly low-cost enclosures to try to keep the cost down, because we do understand that it is a temporary installation.
And I'm going to do something I vowed never to do, so I apologize in advance. Well,
This ought to be good.
I've seen you, look, I've seen quite a bit of you today, by the way.
Yeah.
We've got, I won't.
Did you guys have lunch or what?
Yeah, it's just a lot of them today.
Just curious.
There's three areas where I noticed significant change differences, and I'm just wondering if that's a matter of spec or if it's just first of all, when you look at a $200,000 difference in a bid, you take note a little bit. One of them was the waste haul. The waste haul was really cheap for RAS versus
As
all the
far
others.
as the contaminated soil, or?
The concrete.
Oh,
And I'm just going to run through these because they're just environmental. The other one was the environmental controls, and the swing was 2,300 to 25,000. That's a huge swing when you look at a bid, and I'm just wondering if there was a spec difference on that, or if it was unclear as to why you get one bidder that can bid 2,300 and the next one and another one come in at 25,000. And for the most part, they all came in that 20 to 25,000 range, but another one was 2,300. So
Sure,
is that
and-
just a wording?
I honestly don't think there's a huge discrepancy as to how they're going to implement it. Their contractors tend to load their bids differently, depending on how they see that they can come out the best in that. So it's a little bit hard to identify one single bid item. Like I said, we talked through it with RAS, and the contract is clear as far as their environmental controls, and so I don't have a huge concern about that.
You think they'll be able to cover it? Okay. And the last one was the pump station, and they were half price.
And quite honestly, that doesn't surprise me that they were inexpensive on that pump station, because there's really not much to it. It's PVC pipe and a very inexpensive pump.
That was what I wanted to hear. Yeah, so you're comfortable that the parameters were set, especially on the environmental controls, that kind of a
Yes.
swing doesn't give you nerves?
No.
That was all I had.
Can we go back to
I
the,
vowed never to micromanage something, and I just did. His eyebrows just got, they were clear up here.
can we back up to the previous slide? Or, well, actually, the one of the property. A couple of questions. You've got the shaded green area, and that's the site grading. That's the only leveling of the site we're doing at this time?
Correct. That is strictly because those corners of the site actually slope away from the site, and so they would drain out into C Street, and we need to be able to contain all of our stormwater to comply with stormwater regulations. That's strictly the reason that we're doing that grading.
So in this phase of the project, are we leveling that big mound of dirt and clearing that out and leveling the whole thing there or not?
We're not. We looked at that. It turned out that there's some contamination in that stockpile, and so we determined that it was better to hang on to that work and do it as part of the cleanup project.
And where are we at on that phase?
I couldn't tell you the answer to that.
Well, we're gonna have to get an answer at some point in time, because we've got a large work area over there, and that place is ramping up, and they need the space, and we can't sit on this any longer. This is my opinion, but that pile of dirt's been there for a long, long time. We need to get this taken care of. This area is exploding with work over there, and it's gonna put people to work, gonna put this county to work, and we need to deal with that. I've asked for 3 years, when are we getting rid of this big pile of dirt in the middle of the work area? And it needs to be addressed, and I'd like some answers at some point in time from staff as to when we're gonna do that.
Thanks, Commissioner Brian Gower, Director of Environmental Programs. On the cleanup side of things, yes, we are actually moving forward on that, on the central waterfront, which is the whole marine trades area, Modca cleanup site, which this is a small component of, but an important one. And we just finished up going out for public comment for an agreed order amendment that just closed. And that sets us up for the next phase of work, which is the design and engineering, development of the final cleanup, and then implementation. So some of the Modca grants that we talked about earlier today, that was one of them that's reshuffled money that allows us to get shovel ready and do some of these cleanup, actually construction project. So we are gearing up to come in behind this and do this in the next phase of our MOTCA projects. It's not going to be, 2 months from now, but we are actively working on that cleanup project, and we hope within the next year or two we could be implementing the full site cleanup. There are other elements there. We do have this portion of the site as the highest priority, and we could break this up into phases and do that construction project as a first phase of that.
I guess one of my questions would be is what does it entail to get that out of the way so we can level that and use that ground prior to total cleanup, so that it can at least be utilized without, we got a lot of ground sitting there that they got driving around a big mountain of crud sitting there, and it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah, we can look at that. We have looked at it in the sense that the disposal and management of that as contaminated material is just exponentially more expensive, so doing that as part of the cleanup makes more sense, but there are other drivers that we can take into consideration and start looking at that as well.
Because a year or two is a long ways away.
Understood.
And it's already been a couple, 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're, and I understand the frustrations of trying to work within the big government wheels, but sometimes we got to kick it in the butt and get it started. And I think this is one of those times that's kind of sat there long enough. We need to get something figured out, and I understand the economical end of it too, Brian. Thank
Okay,
you.
great, thank you.
So, Brian, if this was to be done on a more expedited basis, would that be an interim action?
Yeah, that's
Or
right.
what
Well,
would
there's a
that
couple ways we
classify
could
it as?
do it. We could do it as just an independent action where we go in and do that and take, and basically do it free of grants, and that would be a cost that would be borne on us, and we could go and do some of that work and just do it and pay for it and do it that way. If we were going to do it with grant money, we could do that as an interim action potentially, which is an early kind of standalone project, a smaller project, or as a phased approach of the final cleanup. I would prefer to do it as an initial phase of the final cleanup, because we're right there. We have the cleanup action plan, which is the document that would allow us to start that phasing versus these interim actions. So that would be my preferred approach, but there are other drivers that we need to think about, of course. So,
Is this area within the area that we're able to draw that AIG insurance plan?
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. So we're not without funds to be able to accomplish this. It's some question about whether the grant funds would be there for it and how it gets bundled.
Right. And the process, in order to access those funds, we'd have to do those as a formal cleanup step in order to access either the AIG or the grant funding. Whereas if we just went in and independently did it, then we wouldn't be eligible for either of those.
And what's the ballpark of cost on this?
I don't know. I'd be totally guessing at this point. Yeah.
No, that means it's a lot of zeros usually. Okay, thank you.
Is there a technical definition for what you call it, crud, to be moved off of that? Is that
You go look at it and tell me what it is.
crud?
It's
Any other questions?
it's the pile. We don't know what's in the middle, but it's the pile.
It's crud.
It's crud.
Anything else?
It's a fairly accurate description.
It's a pile of crud, excuse me.
Let's-
I'll expand on that definition.
Let's go to vote on this before this gets out of hand.
I have no more questions.
I have no more questions.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Raz Construction of Bellingham, Washington for the C Street Terminal Project Phase 2 in the amount of $540,130.30, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $594,143.33.
Mr. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
I'm an aye as well.
And I am an aye as well.
Thank you.
We'll see you again when the crud proposal comes up. Item number 4.
Is a motion to approve an extension and modification of lease between the Port of Bellingham and Yorkston Oil Company Incorporated.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Terry Elahi, Real Estate Representative. Yorkston Oil Company's lease on Raider Avenue expired by its terms on October 31st, 2018. This extension and modification of lease gives them a 7-month term through May 31 of 2019, keeps the rent stable, and in return for that, they release any claims that they have on the extension or renewal of that lease. Staff recommends approval of this document. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't have any further questions on this one.
The only question I have is if we resolve the issue that sent out automatic.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, very good. That's my only question. Thank you.
Yes.
That's all I had too, is we're all a little red-faced, yes? So thank you for that. I have no more questions. Call the question.
A motion to approve an extension and modification of lease between the Port of Bellingham and Yorkston Oil Incorporated.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. Bell is an aye as well.
Thank you.
And I'm going to apologize to Harley here for just a sec. We've got a public comment period at 5:30 that we've got to go through. So we're going to hold you over until after that, if that's okay. I knew you wanted to get this off your plate, and it was nice of you to come in. But we'll do that as soon as this public comment period is over. And that being said, I'm going to go through the advisory committees. And when we're done with that, we'll take a small break. Advisory committee meeting schedule. The Marina Advisory Committee is Tuesday, November 13th and December 4th at 6 o'clock in the Harbor Center building, which is right here. The Technical Airport Advisory Committee is Thursday, November 8th at 9:30 a.m. in the ARF conference room. And the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee is Thursday, November 8th at 5 p.m. in the ARF conference room out on Bakerview Road. Encourage everyone to attend. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to take this to the Marine Advisory Committee as well when you get there. So that being said, we'll take a small break and reconvene at 5:30. Okay, we're going to reconvene. So we will reconvene Port Commission meeting. And with that, what we have left is other business. Gentlemen, I promised Harley we'd get to his, so why don't we discuss that first?
I'd like to take the lead on that if I could, seeing as how we started this
Do I have a
a
choice?
little over a year ago. No, you have a choice. You got the gavel, you can hit me, put me out of my miseries, whatever.
Yeah, let's just see where you take it then.
I think it was about a year ago. We looked into the locker issue, Harley. I've known for years we've had issues there. I mean, I've grown up in this harbor since I was a little teeny, well, since I can't remember.
That was yesterday.
And that was about 6 weeks ago. At any rate, we do have a lot of lockers with folks in them that shouldn't be in them. And I have told staff that I would bear the burden on my back of all the flack and everything that's going to come that way. And I apologize to everyone. I've dropped the ball on this. I haven't pursued it. Been busy with other things maybe I shouldn't have been, but we need to get going again. And we tried to implement a new locker lease paperwork, and maybe Alan can enlighten us to where we're at on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alan Birdsall, Manager of Marinas. Yeah, it was about a year ago, I think, since I was standing here talking to you about this. And I've got to say that through regular day-to-day operations and everything going on, this one has slipped through the cracks on us. And we're going to have to pick this one back up and march forward on it. We do understand all the issues and the complexities that are going on with it. We still have to go after some of the users and get them back on board with the new lease agreement or the use agreement. One of the things we were intending on doing was utilizing the relocating of the storage yard here at Squalicum Harbor and Webb House 1 as being able to use the crux to get a few more of those folks on board and see where we're at that point. But staff we're going to push this one back up to the top and move it forward.
Hey, Alan, is it unreasonable to expect a policy by next commission meeting, 2 weeks?
We could have a draft idea put out. We have a Marine Advisory Committee next week, and we can talk to the chair and see if we can get this on the agenda for next week as well, and then come up with a suggested order for eliminating those folks who are no longer needing the lockers, or when we have a demand. Commissioner Briscoe had requested a procedure and a policy to be put into place on who and how do we eliminate folks out of the web lockers if we have a demand by an active commercial fisherman for the web lockers. And I think we can have something together. It's not as easy as it seems when you have two different extremes, active users that may not be active commercial fishermen or old retired folks that no longer may need a locker, but they've been around for an awful long time. So we have both of those.
Well, in my mind, and I'm kind of tired of waiting, you know, we've talked about policies, we've got drafts, we've got this, we've got that. It's been a year. And I'm going to tell everybody point blank, and the people that are my friends over here and everything else, I'm tired of waiting. We need to get this done. I'm tired of being nice about it. We've gone out, we've tried to be nice. We've tried to make everybody happy, and we can't do that. We need to get the job done, and it's going to be ugly, and I don't care. I'll bear whatever's going to come our way. We need to go in and get rid of the people that don't belong in lockers and give it to active people like Harley that's been waiting for 9 years. And he's not the only one. There's another gentleman that's got 2 big boats tied up in this harbor that doesn't have any place to store his stuff. We got guys over here doing business out of these lockers that don't even fish. And I'm getting pretty pissed about it. And I'm glad Harley has brought it to a head, and we need to get it done. And I don't want to hear about drafts. I don't want to hear about any of that stuff. We've done that. We brought something forward. We need to implement it, Alan. If they don't like the language in the locker lease or whatever, that's tough nuts. We're going to get this done. And I will bear the brunt of everything. I don't care. I want it done.
So just to reiterate that this is not a dictatorship, we will help you with that, and we'll bear the burden of that. My concern is that it be clear, concise, and consistent. So whatever policy you come up with, straightforward, consistent across the board, no ambiguity. We have the same standard for everybody so that everybody knows the rules. It's not a,
We've done that. We have the paper. Am I incorrect in saying that we've brought new locker leases forward and some people don't like it? They didn't like the language. Like, this is what I'm saying, tough nuts. You're not going to make everybody happy, but it is
but it's,
consistent.
that's our job, right?
Right.
So
It's
if you can get us a
consistent.
policy that's consistent, clear, concise, everybody knows the rules, everybody knows what they're being used for. Our job is to create work, so my belief is just that, so.
And that's what those web lockers do, and it's not just an issue in this harbor. I was just in Blaine last week, and the same issue was brought up to me by people who have been on the list for 3+ years, who are doing active work, and that web locker is the difference between their business treading water and moving forward and hiring more people and expanding. And so it's something Director Fix and I spoke about last week, and it's an issue at both of our harbors, and it definitely has my attention, and I would like us to move swiftly on it as well.
And I think you heard from us that don't be afraid to do the right thing. So put the policy in that's the right thing to do, and you'll get the support from all of us because we work as a commission.
And understand when I said I'm pissed, I'm not upset with staff. I'm upset with all the people that are around here that are running to staff and saying, we don't like this, we don't like this word, we don't like that word. Well, I really don't care whether you like it or not anymore. We've got to do something. This mess was given to this commission and this staff that's here today by the commission and staff of long ago by not doing their job. And I was in this harbor when they didn't do their job. They started letting everybody in because the lockers weren't full, and the next thing you know, we got a mess. And that's what we got to deal with today, and it's going to piss people off, but so be it. You can't make everybody happy, but we need to do the right thing, and that's what we're going to do here.
We have all the policies in place that says who can use the lockers and in what method and what fashion and how we assign them out. What we don't have is who we vacate.
And what
When there's a demand. And at this point, we anticipate that there may be 16 lockers up in Blaine that may not be active commercial fishers, but we have 14 people on the list. So part of that policy is, do we get rid of all 16 that may not be active commercial fishing and then have 2 empty lockers and not receive the revenues from that? So that's from an operational standpoint.
Got to
that,
be
you know,
consistent.
You won't have 2 empty lockers very long.
That's what we anticipate, because then that opens up a web locker for somebody who wants to move and relocate to Blaine, which Andy does know there's a couple of folks out there.
And we need to build another web locker in Blaine, because I know we can fill that up and bring boats to the harbor if we do that.
And the worst thing we could do is only evict 14 of the 16 that aren't following the policy,
That would
because
be
now we're
arbitrary.
not following the policy, right?
Exactly.
So,
That's the arbitrary thing that I would be afraid of.
Yeah.
Just I like about these open discussions.
Yeah. And when I spoke with Andy, it's part, having that open space is, I think, a great win, because that's a selling point that we're able to try and attract somebody to relocate to our harbor. We're able to say, hey, we can house you. We can put you in a home here at our harbor, make Blaine your home. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to have some refresh and to be able to attract some new folks here.
Excellent. We love to have the support.
I think you've
Quite
got new
honestly, from
direction.
the staff point, I'd love to hear what I'm hearing right now.
Well, we hear you loud and clear, and we're on it.
Our job is to make you happy. All right.
And if you do run into real criticism, just send them my way.
We'll
I'll
do
be
it,
more than
Commissioner.
happy to talk to them.
Thank you.
All right, that being said, now we've got our second public comment period. Anybody else wishing to speak to any issue before us or not before us? And my thanks to Diane for keeping me on track.
Tough job, but she can do it.
Hearing no more public comment, any other business that you gentlemen would love to bring up?
No, I think the platter's still full.
I'm in agreement.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just one quick item. On the agenda, the next meeting, you're going to see a schedule for 2019. It's much earlier than we usually bring you a commission meeting schedule, but it turns out that the first meeting of January is on New Year's Day. And so we'd prefer to do it the next Tuesday.
We can change, yeah, I was going to say, we
So,
can change
yeah,
that.
we're going to do that on November 20th, and we're going to bring you the full year now, just so there's no confusion, and we can have a discussion about that. But the current intent is one meeting in July and one in August, just like we did this year, one in December, and movement of that meeting in January. Everything else will be on the first and third Tuesdays. So again, we'll present this to you on the agenda, open public meeting. You'll have full visual of it, but I wanted to give you the heads up now in case there was concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, gentlemen, meeting adjourned.